welcome to this special edition of Prime Time. We are bringing you the live updates on the toughest and the tightest race to the White House in the US election history. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what it is all about. The biggest prize in American politics. Come January, and it will have a new president. Now, will it be Kamala Harris or is it going to be Donald Trump? That's what we are here to find out tonight. There is a buzz all over the US of America. A feeling of tension is now building up as we approach the night, and this is only going to increase in the next hour or two as we get deeper into the night. Like all Americans, President Biden, the sitting current president, is also going to be glued to his television tonight, because tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is the big election day, the day of voting. Technically, we can have a winner by tonight, but a lot of Americans voted early this time. They sent in mail-in ballots and they sent in postal votes, so it could take a bit longer. But don't worry, we will be right here throughout with you throughout the night, covering the latest results. So make sure that you stay tuned in with CVR English tonight, because we've got a packed show lined up for you tonight. We are looking at how Washington is preparing for tonight, what sort of security measures are in place, and we also witnessed a women's march day before yesterday. We'll tell you at CVR English, we will tell you what women voters are looking for this time and who is leading the merchandise race. From Trump hats to Harris badges being sold all over America, it's all being sold in Washington and across the country indeed. And what does it say about the ground sentiment? All this and more, viewers, all this and more is lined up just for you. It's the final stretch here in the United States. Less than a night is left until the polls close, until a new president is elected. Americans have been lining up to vote at the polling stations since morning. But like we just said, a lot of them have already voted. More than 77 million of them. And how? Through the early voting system. Now here in America, you can request a ballot on mail. You can fill it up, select your candidate, and then drop it off at a ballot box, at any ballot box, or even mail them by the postal services which are available. More than 77 million Americans have done it so far, and that's around 47% of the total turnout in the last election. These people have already voted, so clearly early voting is the future of America. In 2020, the Democrats dominated this field, but this time around, the Republicans have too caught up, mainly because Donald Trump has now changed his position on this. Well, last time you see, he opposed early voting, but this time he is supporting it. Around 38% of early voting has been done by the Democrats, and the Republicans are at 36%. So this gap is pretty narrow. Now we come to the opinion polls. Who is leading and by how much? I know all of you want to know that. Well, Harris has a narrow edge over Trump in the national polls. But like we've said, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't really matter here in the US, because it finally comes down to the Electoral College, to the swing states, the 7 swing states. Let's quickly look at the situation there. Harris is leading in Nevada by 3 points. She's leading in North Carolina by 2 points. In Wisconsin, she leads by 2 points again, and in Georgia by 1 point. In Pennsylvania and Michigan, well, things are quite tight, things are even, and in Arizona, Trump leads by 4 points so far. That's the latest report so far, viewers, by CVR English. Now these numbers make a couple of things quite clear. One, Harris has found some momentum, some new momentum rather. Apparently, last minute undecided voters are now picking her. That's quite interesting to watch. And two, Donald Trump is also consolidating. Harris may hold the edge among the early voters, but tonight rather, it's all about in-person voting, and that remains Donald Trump's strong core area, which brings us back to the campaign. Both Harris and Trump are hitting the swing states and they are hitting them hard. Harris spent a lot of time in Michigan. Meanwhile, Trump spoke in North Carolina and Georgia yesterday, like we showed you. As I said, this is the final stretch. Most of the voters must have already made up their minds, so it's all about putting the finishing touches now. Kamala Harris focused on the Muslim vote. Michigan, you see, is home to around 200,000 Arab Americans. They put Joe Biden over the line in 2020. They helped him win last time. But this time, things have changed. It's not a guarantee anymore. The Arab Americans are angry about Biden's support to Israel, the Gaza war. And Harris may have to pay the price for that. Well, she tried to do some damage control on last Sunday. What she did was that she promised to end the Gaza war if she gets elected to the White House. Beyond that, she stuck pretty much to the script. She accused Donald Trump of dividing America, promised to fight hate politics and to reduce the cost of living crisis, quote unquote. Strange, because she's already vice president and that's always been a struggle for Harris, really. She's a member of the current sitting administration, but the current administration is deeply unpopular. You see, Biden's approval ratings in America are standing at 39%, so Harris finds herself in a spot of bother. She can't really criticize her own government, but she can also not embrace it. Tough, tight spot for Harris, must I say, right there. So Kamala Harris has opted for the middle ground. She's not calling for new leadership. She's calling for something else. She's calling for, quote unquote, a new generation of leadership. After all, how much more of a politician can she become after she makes that statement? On the other side, Trump did what Trump always does. He held a number of rallies on Sunday, and most of them had pretty much the same theme, and I quote, "America as a broken country and only he can fix it." It's a strategy that worked for him in 2016. It's finding even more takers this time around, it seems, because of the cost of living crisis. Trump's campaign is mostly centered around two major issues this time: tariffs and immigration. We saw that again on Sunday. He used some extreme rhetoric on Sunday, but clearly it looks like America is liking it. Donald Trump also trained his guns on the pollsters and the journalists, the media, quite literally, you see. Trump was surrounded by bulletproof glass at the rallies, but those glasses had gaps. And Trump said he was not worried though, because to get to him, an assassin would have to shoot through, quote unquote, fake news and the press corps. Fake news and the press corps, that's what Trump says, and he doesn't mind that. Trump also took issue with the new poll, one of the polls which says that Kamala Harris is leading him in the state of Iowa. The poll has surprised a lot of people because Iowa had voted for Trump in 2016 and then again in 2020. The last Democrat to flip it was Barack Obama. If Harris manages to do that, and if this is true news, it would be a big setback to Donald Trump. Of course, his campaign has categorically rejected this poll. They say that it's a malicious attempt to demoralize his voters, and frankly, a lot of that is going on at present this time around. It is quite rather a hard fact. Especially on social media, hundreds of pollsters are spreading fake news about the US election. Most of them are Trump supporters, but some of them are Democrats too. And why are they doing this? To destroy the credibility of the entire election process of the US. Around 70% of the Americans think that Donald Trump will not concede, will not accept his loss if he loses. That he will question the results like he did the last time too. His supporters are now laying the groundwork for that so that he does not concede. Let me share some examples with you. Recently, an influencer in Pennsylvania filmed a man popping off large number of ballots. He said that the whole thing was rather suspicious. But guess what? The man was a postmaster. His job is to drop off ballots. A lot of accounts also posted pictures with the caption, and I quote, "I live in Canada, but I drove down to vote." The idea is to say that even the Canadians are voting for Harris. Again, I must tell you, it's a false claim. The first social media video posted by an influencer in Pennsylvania filming a man popping off such a large number of ballots was later on busted by the poll officials, but not before it got 6 million views. Plus, it is a lot of unnecessary work for the election officials. They must be held responsible for conducting fair elections, but at the same time, they're also responsible for busting fake news. Why can't social media platforms pitch in? Because they too are part of the problem. Especially, ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk and his ex. He's the most followed person on his platform, and he's now pushing fake news. Elon Musk says, and I quote, "The Democrats are making illegal migrants vote." He also said that if Trump is not elected this time, this will be the last US election. Quite radical statements being posted by the owner of X. Again, fake news and highly dangerous rhetoric for a society, for an American society filled with highly impressionable minds. Of course, if Trump wins, none of this will matter anymore. But if he does not win, expect some nervous days for America. Here's a special report.
I'll fix it. Most important election in the history of our country.
How are you?
Maria? Hi. Hi.
Yes, you go on. How's it going?
You know, it's the day before the election, but I just wanted to come by and say I hope to earn your vote.
On the final day of their respective presidential campaigns, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both predicted victory on Monday, with opinion polls showing them locked in a dead heat. The candidates concentrated their efforts in Pennsylvania, the biggest prize on Election Day among the 7 states expected to decide the outcome. Trump appeared before a large crowd in Pittsburgh, where he delivered what his campaign called his closing message to voters.
"I will restore peace in the world, and I will rescue the American dream."
Trump pushed economic themes, vowing to deliver an economic boom, while warning Harris would bring economic misery.
My message to Americans tonight is simple.
Its internal data shows that undecided voters are breaking in their favor. It reports an increase in early voting among core parts of its coalition, including young voters and voters of color. Trump campaign officials meanwhile said they were monitoring early voting results that show more women have voted than men. That is significant considering Harris's 12-point edge over Trump among female registered voters, according to an October Reuters Ipsos poll. The winner may not be known for days after Tuesday's vote. Trump and his allies, who falsely claim his 2020 election loss was the result of fraud, have already signaled they will attempt to fight any defeat. They have spent months laying the groundwork to again challenge the result if he loses. Harris campaign officials said any attempts by Trump to allege fraud will fail, while Democrats say they have plans in place should Trump try to prematurely claim victory.
Viewers, the biggest race of all the races for the White House in the history of America. Both former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are still trying. They're still trying to sway the voters in the 7 key swing states as I speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finally here. The race to the White House, Election Day 2024, this is the final day. And on this eve of the election, both the candidates are making those final pushes in the battleground states. So let's take you right there. Donald Trump took to visiting his last campaign stop from 2016 and 2020. After starting in North Carolina yesterday and Pennsylvania, he also had a late night rally in Rapids, Michigan. Vice President Kamala Harris too went all in. She went all in on Pennsylvania, closing in on a multi-stop tour this day with star-studded concerts, rallies in Pittsburgh, and then from the base of the famous Rocky Steps at the Philadelphia Art Museum. Already, more than 81 million Americans have voted early as I am speaking to you and as the numbers are pouring in. And in this election, we have 2.29 million voting early. In Virginia, still a lot of people are going to be hitting the polls, casting their ballots. Watch this.
I've been waiting 4 years for this. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here. You're out of here.
Hello to our great sports fans, and I hope you're having a fantastic time. We're 2 days away from the most important election in the history of our country. We've got to save our country, and it needs saving. It's in very bad shape. We have to straighten out our country. We have to close our borders. We have to lower our taxes. We have to get rid of inflation, and we're going to do it. Just remember, Kamala and her friends broke it. I'll fix it. Most important election in the history of our country.
How are you? Maria? Hi. Hi.
Yes, you go on.
How's it going? You know, it's the day before the election, but I just wanted to come by and say I hope to earn your vote.
On the final day of their respective presidential campaigns, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both predicted victory on Monday, with opinion polls showing them locked in a dead heat. The candidates concentrated their efforts in Pennsylvania during economic misery.
My message.
Not going back. We are not going back.
Yes, you go.
Out the vote.
The race ain't over yet. And we must finish strong. And this could be one of the closest races in history. Every single vote matters.
The Harris campaign says its internal data shows that undecided voters are breaking in their favor. It reports an increase in early voting among core parts of its coalition, including young voters and voters of color. Trump campaign officials meanwhile said they were monitoring early voting results that show more women have voted than men. That is significant considering Harris's 12-point edge over Trump among female registered voters, according to an October Reuters Ipsos poll. The winner may not be known for days after Tuesday's vote. Trump and his allies, who falsely claim his 2020 election loss was the result of fraud, have already signaled they will attempt to fight any defeat. They have spent months laying the groundwork to again challenge the result if he loses. Harris campaign officials said any attempts by Trump to allege fraud will fail, while Democrats say they have plans in place should Trump.
Viewers, as we push further and further into the night of November 5th, we are inching closer and closer to the final results, and very soon, in a couple of hours from now, we will have the results blown out loud. We will know who the next US president is going to be come January, and this new president is going to be seated inside the White House. As we push further and further into the night, the numbers are pouring in live here at the CVR English studio, and polling for this year's US presidential election is underway. And we are looking at in-person polling right now. Residents of Maryland have started to arrive at polling stations more and more. Many citizens were even seen waiting in line earlier this morning, eager to participate in the electoral process. The local authorities have set up a lot of measures to ensure a smooth voting experience for all the Americans and the Indian Americans, with volunteers and election officials assisting the voters. As the day progressed, more and more people visited. And as we are progressing into the night, more and more people are visiting the polling stations to make their voices heard in this crucial election. Ladies and gentlemen, must I remind you at this point, this election is the biggest election across the globe. USA, the United States of America, happens to be the biggest democracy in the world, and right now we are witnessing the biggest election battle around the globe. In the history of America, in the last 50 years, this has been the toughest and the tightest race. It's been a neck-to-neck battle between Trump and Harris, and never ever in the history of America have we witnessed a race tougher and tighter than this. A race as close as this has not been witnessed in the history of United States of America in the last 50 years. I must say, the enthusiasm is quite high, with people from various backgrounds engaging in this electoral process. Watch this.
Important part of our history as Americans that today you have gone and voted, and it's important whether you vote Democrat or Republican. It is a special thing to be able to vote for your candidate, and I wish everybody good luck today in Election Day.
How do you feel about this election, and what do you think the outcome could be?
Well, I think we've all been having lots of anxiety about the outcome of the election, and depending upon how it comes out, we may be struggling to make ends meet. We may be struggling.
Voters across the United States are heading to the polls to cast their votes in this highly anticipated US presidential election. The race is such a fierce battle between the current Vice President and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and former President of the United States of America Donald Trump, who is now seeking a return to office, seeking a return to the White House under his Republican banner. Now, as the polls close while we speak, the votes will begin to be counted, with the results expected in just a few hours. This election is shaping up to be one of the most closely watched and one of the most fierce in recent history of America. Well, as the campaigners campaigned across Pennsylvania and the other battleground states on this final frantic day of the exceptionally close US presidential election, both Donald Trump as well as Kamala Harris have predicted their own victory. Each candidate has expressed confidence in their chances of winning, with Trump rallying his supporters with optimism, while Harris has maintained a strong belief in her campaign's success and her values. Watch this.
On the final day of their respective presidential Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both predicted victory on Monday, with opinion polls showing them locked in a dead heat. The candidates concentrated their efforts in Puerto Rico.
And we must finish strong, and this could be one of the closest races in history. Every single vote matters.
The Harris campaign says its internal data shows that undecided voters are breaking in their favor. It reports.
Viewers, so what's the bottom line here? Kamala Harris, she is the bid to become the first female, first black woman and the first person of South Asian descent to hold the office of president. She mentions her focus on issues like women's abortion rights, rights on their own bodies, lowering the food and the housing costs for the working families. She focuses on social justice and she calls out for climate change and global warming. Her approach is presented as one of unity, contrasting with the divisiveness of recent years. And what about Donald Trump? Well, he is the man behind which tax cuts, stricter immigration policies and economic growth have occurred in the past as well. He discusses his populist rhetoric, his radical rhetoric, and focuses on issues like securing the border, immigration issues, and putting America's safety first. He acknowledges the controversies surrounding him. He calls out fake news and the media corps, including felony charges and the January 6th Capitol insurrection, but also notes his supreme confidence in his chances of victory and the loyalty of his supporters. Well, that's the gist of tonight's show. That's the top focus of tonight's show, which is the US presidential election race, which tonight comes to an end. And in just a few hours, viewers, I repeat, in just a few hours from now, we will have the results out there in the world. We will have the new 47th President of the United States of America elected. Until then, we will keep you posted on the minute-by-minute developments and details on this story. Till then, keep watching CVR English for more news and updates.